Welcome, San Diego Comic-Con. You are sitting at home. You are enjoying all this content. It's Comic-Con at home. I'm so excited that San Diego Comic-Con is doing this and bringing content to us because we nerds, we live on this stuff. And I'm very excited to introduce the members of our panel for today's panel, the Independent Filmmakers Survival Guide. I believe that this is actually a golden age now for independent film. I know that 2020 has been a difficult year for everybody, but I believe what it's done is given independent filmmakers an opportunity to be on an even playing field with the big studio movies as everything comes to VOD and streaming. And I've got a Justice League, I would even say maybe a Jedi Council of filmmakers and pundits here to talk to you today about an independent filmmaker survival guide. What can we be doing as filmmakers, and how can we enjoy independent films as film fans? First up, Robert Meyer Burnett from Robservations. Good to see you, Rob.
Chris, it's great to be here. And of course, you know, you and I have known each other for like the better part of 30 years. And your magazine, Film Threat, it was the first review I ever got for a short film we made called The Sacred Fire. So we got a good review too. You've always been somebody I've looked up to as far as the pulse of the independent film community. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show here. The panel, this is different. We're doing this differently. I want to introduce Tara Wood. Tara, so great to have you on the show. Tara's a documentary filmmaker, made the film you might have seen, QT8, which is the first 8 Quentin Tarantino films. If you are a fan of Quentin Tarantino, this is the definitive documentary about his career. Tara's working on a couple of other film projects. I don't know if I can talk about, Tara, you can tell me? No?
There's a couple we can talk about. Yeah, sure.
We'll definitely get
into. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I'm so happy that you keep up and keep it going, and Comic-Con's doing what they're doing. It's exciting. Cannes is trying to do this, so I'm
glad that we can all do this. We're kind of getting used to these new tools, which is exciting. But Tara and I met at the, it was the Mammoth Film Festival, which was fantastic. And then also you were on my podcast before that. So that was super fun.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a QT8 fun time. Yeah.
It was good. So let's also introduce a legend, a hero of mine. If you are, if you know anything about indie film and you're a fan of the Puppet Master series, there are too many movies to mention. Charlie Band, thank you so much, from Full Moon Entertainment. Charlie, it's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for putting this together. Boy, has the world got weird or what?
Exactly. You know, but hey, there's so much great indie film content out there. And what I think is exciting is this is an opportunity. I know people are talking about whatever latest Netflix show they can binge, but I'll tell you, there's so many great indie films out there. And the fact that they're on an even playing field with your studio movies now, and as we shift to movie theaters opening, this is a really great opportunity. And even movies coming to the drive-in. Drive-ins have had a resurgence.
Right.
It's been fantastic.
That's awesome.
Some of these movies are kind of made for the drive-in. But I wanted to kick things off and ask you each, as we get started. We got a whole bunch of questions and things and discussion topics I want to get into, but I'd like to get your recommendations for an independent film that you think people should see, that would be maybe something that people might not know about. And feel free to plug some of your own movies. I'll talk about one that a real quick recommendation for a documentary called You Don't Know Me, NOMI, which is the documentary about showgirls. And what's fascinating about this documentary is the filmmaker made this and shot no footage. He did all the interviews over Zoom using microphone. So there was no footage shot for it. He just used found footage and footage from showgirls because of fair use. And the filmmaker's name is Jeffrey McHale. He made this documentary basically over Zoom, shot no footage. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen about a movie, a particular movie. And Showgirls, the 1995, people say it's a bomb, but now it's got a cult following.
It's painful.
I want to hear your recommendations. Rob, what indie film recommendation would you have?
Well, you know, it's not new, but when people ask about what can you do, I always think about Shane Carruth's first film, Primer, because it was basically a mind-bending science fiction time travel thriller that he made famously for $30,000. And it's a film that I actually first saw. I was working on a project in a foreign country, and I'd taken the DVD with me, and I watched it twice back to back, which is something I haven't done a lot in my life. But it proved to me that you don't need a huge budget to make a really compelling, heady, mind-twisting film that was done. I mean, no recognizable actors. It was done with not a whole lot of production design, no special effects, but it was a really good idea that was really well executed, and it doesn't break the bank. You didn't even have to, with the amount of money that movie cost, you didn't even have to go into monster debt to make it. And it shows nowadays with the kinds of tools, with Soderbergh making movies for Netflix with iPhones. I mean, yeah, you have to have talent. You have to know what you're doing. Not everybody can just go out and make a film that people are going to watch. But there's no excuse. If you've got an idea, you can make almost anything now.
Tara, what would you recommend? I would recommend QT8. That's the one. So now you can't take that one.
I watched, I think it came out in 2019. It was the Miles Davis documentary. Have you all seen that? I mean, it was beautiful. I thought that was really well done. People that have, a dark side to them, but create this beautiful art, and to be able to put that in a documentary and see both sides and feel both sides and have empathy, I thought they did a really great job with that. I thought that was really well done.
Is it called Miles Davis, The Birth of Cool? Is that the one?
Is it The Birth? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the
cool
subhead to it. Yeah,
yes.
But that one is fantastic. Charlie, what do you recommend? I would recommend Corona Zombies. I think that's one that's look, I've introduced that movie to so many people, and one, they can't believe it was made, which is fun. But the other thing is it's so entertaining, and I love that my colleague at Film Threat, Alan Ng, compared it to What's Up, Tiger Lily, because it has that aspect to it.
Well, it'd be like really weird for me to introduce one of my own movies. So I don't know about, Corona Zombies, but I can talk about the sequel, also made during the pandemic. It's called Barbie and Kendra Save the Tiger King. We've made two of these in the approximate 60 days since we all had to go home, and because we have offices at a studio here in LA called Raleigh Studios. So we all went home a few days before the 20th of March, and I shot these two movies, which sounds very lofty, but in each case, it was a one-day shoot. And the basic premise, the Barbie and Kendra characters are the sort of bookends, and they jump back and forth as they're watching these different shows. Obviously, one is it's basically sort of a What's Up, Tiger Lily to Hell of the Living Dead, a movie made in the early 80s in Italy, where we took out the soundtrack and put in some very funny dialogue and, in many cases, new music. We cut back and forth to them. I mean, I'm telling you, you've already seen the thing, but it's clever. We did it all, obviously, from our homes, with the exception of sneaking out. And we actually shot that one day. It was at 8 hours on the day of the lockdown, which was March 20th. We had a plan that week. The idea came to me about a week prior. And then, of course, it was a little bit of nervousness, like, dude, they just announced a lockdown. But, we shot it at the writer's house. There was altogether, I think, 11 of us. And it was a challenge. It was fun because there's a lot of voice actors, and that all had to be done remote, in many cases on their iPhones. Now, luckily, some of these voice actors are well known. They have their own setup at home. And, from soup to nuts, from the editing to post, to the mix, to the music, to the whole thing, it was done, in everyone's respective homes. And it did well enough, and it was crazy enough. It's a comedy, we did get some shit because some people, oh my God, how can you think of doing something Corona Zombies? But it's a snapshot of how we all, I think, felt voiced through this girl when suddenly we were all at home. So couldn't resist doing another one. And the other one is actually, have you seen it yet, Chris?
Which one? What's the new one?
Tiger King. Barbie and Kendra Save the Tiger King.
Well, I have seen the trailer, and I feel like I know I'm going to have a good time, but I've not seen the whole thing yet.
It's even more fun in a way. I mean, even though I love the zombie thing, because we wrapped in the whole Tiger King thing. I tried to find a way to connect with Joe Exotic, but as we all know, he's in the Slammer. So
right.
my first choice with the group that were in the show was a fellow named John Rinke, who was the fellow without the legs, who was the zookeeper.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the story's endless, but we tracked him down in a small town in Texas, hooked up with him, and made a deal where he would appear in this movie. So as the girls are watching this faux nature network, which tells the story of the Tiger King, of course, all invented, we also have moments with him as he's reacting. And, it's hard to describe because it sounds absurd, but we also got really great voice actors. And Leslie Jordan, if you know who he is, stole the show because he played the voice of the 5-year-old Tiger King. And it's hard to describe how funny it is, but it is very, very funny. So we've been keeping busy with that, obviously. And these are shows that are, conjured up and executed in our, respective homes.
Well, the fact that you could make it like during the lockdown, I think is really impressive. We do have a late arrival to our panel. So it's almost like, you know what it is? Every time you do a panel at Comic-Con, there's always someone who kind of shows up late. And we have Alex Ferrari is joining us from Indie Film Hustle. Alex, how are you doing?
I am good, sir. I was fighting the coronavirus outside before I got in, so I apologize for my tardiness.
Oh, that's okay. We're happy to have you here. If you're not familiar with Alex's work, let me put in a plug for you, Alex. He did a book called Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, which helps instruct filmmakers how to basically make a living as an independent filmmaker. And your podcast and YouTube channel, Indie Film Hustle, is so fantastic at dispensing real world, like really helpful information for indie filmmakers. You really share everything soup to nuts, how to do it. So really happy that you're on with us. And you also, being a filmmaker yourself, you made a movie called On the Corner of Ego and Desire, which is exactly what it's like to go to Sundance. If you've ever wondered and never been to Sundance, you want to know what it's like. This movie, which is a comedy, it definitely, and it's even funnier if you've been to Sundance. Rob, I know you've been to Sundance. Like it's so fun. So we just now we're going through recommendations for indie films that you would throw out. I do recommend On the Corner of Ego and Desire. Do you have an independent film recommendation for us?
I have not had a lot of time to watch specific independent films. Well, first of all, before we get into it, thank you so much for that amazing intro, Chris. So thanks so much.
Sure.
I don't have any specific indie films off the top of my head because I just have been so busy. I've not had a chance to watch any specific independent films that are recent. I can give you movies from the past that I can recommend. Living from Oblivion, I think is a prerequisite for every independent filmmaker to watch. I think that one really does capture the production of independent film in such a wonderful way.
And in a way, wasn't Brad Pitt was kind of inspired that movie in a way, Living in Oblivion, right? Isn't that correct?
I think that is correct. Yeah, I think that is correct. And I got a subscription to HBO Max and was watching The Player. It was on there as well, and I haven't seen The Player in forever.
Oh my
God. And it's so good. It's Altman at his best. It really is such a wonderful film.
Robert, that movie, The Player, really holds up. I live in Pasadena, and the Rialto Theater is not too far from me. So I love that that's a location. Rob, you're in Pasadena as well. So, I've always thought that they should do a remake of The Player, but set it present day and have it all be about like Marvel movies are the big thing. Superhero movies is sort of the subtext. This was always like romantic thrillers was the subtext. It's always, Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts was whoever wanted to cast.
And influencers. How many followers do you have? That's how you get cast. Obviously,
Michael Tolkien, who wrote the book The Player that the movie was based on, did write a sequel called The Return of the Player.
Oh, wow! I wasn't aware of that.
I mean, there is something to be mined there, and you could get Griffin Mill to come back. You could have the same cast.
Oh, that would be amazing.
You could. That would be great. Let's move on. I got so many questions for you guys. I know we have limited time on this panel, but I want to ask, like, all of you, like, how are you using your time now? I know it's sort of been out there that, like, if you don't emerge from this having written a novel or done something, like, you've wasted your time. How is everyone how are everyone here using their time? Rob, we'll start with you and go around.
Well, it's been sort of crazy. I've been busier now than I've been in a long time. I mean, a horror film that I produced back in 2009 with a former compatriot from Full Moon who directed it, Dave Parker, called The Hills Run Red, was picked up by Scream Factory, and they put out the Blu-ray finally. spent a lot of quarantine creating 6.5 hours of special features for an 81-minute movie. So we did that, and I had shot about 30 hours of behind the scenes in Sofia, Bulgaria, where we shot the film, but I never was able to use it. So I had all this stuff, and then at the same time, I've been working as an editor on a Netflix animated series that hasn't been announced. And so what I do is I work on the animatics that come from a Korean animation company, and I work with the producers. Normally they would come to my house, and we would work on the animatic and then send it back. But we've been working completely remotely. So we haven't even seen each other. We've been editing via Zoom. So I'll share my screen, we edit everything, and then I send back the file. I put it on Dropbox, and it gets picked up and goes to Korea. And we've done 4 episodes of that. And then an independent film that I produced and edited called Tango Shalom, that I'm working on for the last 3.5 years. We finished that too. And again, everything's being done remotely, and it's actually been kind of liberating. And then I've been storyboarding a project by using Fiverr, by finding an artist on Fiverr who does storyboards when I can afford to, get 2 or 3 more pages of the script storyboarded. They send it back to me, and I've been cutting it into a story reel. So when I finally go out and try and sell this project, you'll be able to watch the entire feature as a sort of an animated, well, some of it's animated, but mostly a story reel, like the first iteration of an animated film, even though it's going to be live action, hopefully.
Well, it's interesting. I think that being in this situation, it's introduced us all to new tools that have kind of forced us to work differently in a way where in some ways we can even be more productive. Fiverr.com that you mentioned, which is Fiverr with 2 R's at the end, is a great place to find digital artists, whether it's video, animation, titling. I mean, there's just so many ways to use Fiverr. I've used it before to have original music created for the Film Threat podcast. I found a composer on there that wrote music for us. So that's a great recommendation. Tara, what can you tell us that you've been working on during this time?
So as you know from Mammoth, we finally acquired the Tony Hawk video game story, that documentary. So that's really exciting.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So
Yeah,
cool.
we're really excited. We have a release date for August 18th. So that's great. We're skipping, obviously, the theatrical, which is a little painful. But I think it's just an interesting time, and I think you just have to accept how things are. I think the audience is there. It's rather captive. So I think that's an interesting side of the business. But so we've been taking delivery on that. I've got another little film called Darkness and Tenement 45, which it's an all-female production about this family stuck in a New York City tenement back in I think it's in the 30s. Because of a worldwide pandemic, and they made the film obviously before this happened. Wow. So I've been very busy as well. Thankfully, it's been great, and I'm excited about these 2 films to be coming out.
Both of them sound great. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
That sounds great. Yeah, I definitely want to see that one. I'm talking about. The timing on that is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony Hawk, the timing with that one as well, is the Pro Skater reboot is coming out September 4th, I believe it is. So I'm not a gamer, but that seems to be blowing the roof.
And also Tony Hawk has his own masterclass that just came out yesterday.
Yes, he does.
Kidding. Oh my God.
I just saw that. I'm like, click.
Yeah, I've seen that documentary, the Tony Hawk documentary. If you're a fan of the video game, if you're just a fan of Tony Hawk, that story is incredible. And there's behind the scenes footage. I didn't believe it, like the stories behind the making of it, from the music to the skaters that were on, just to Tony's like dedication to the authenticity of representing skateboarding in a positive way is so great. So congratulations on getting that doc.
Thank you. Yeah, the guys talking about that, the skaters who were literally street skaters and became characters on a video game, which they didn't even understand what that was at the time, and literally made millions of dollars. And it changed their lives, and they're all giving it back in some way or another. Tony has the foundation to build skate parks around the country, and that there's so many benefits of that, obviously, for kids. So it's really exciting, it's cool, and they're all really good guys.
Congrats again.
Thank
Charlie,
you.
I know that like every time I talk to you, you've made a new movie, but what can you tell us you've been working on?
Well, just a quick comment, I'm fascinated by what everyone's talking about, and I'm so much in my bubble. I have no clue about anything any of you've said. All these different, I've made some notes because I want to try to catch up a bit. But honestly, there's nothing too different from the way I'm operating now. Being at home for 10 weeks, 11 weeks, than when I'm at my office. I mean, I'm still in my office in my pod. This is just another pod. It's a bummer not to see people, but we have Zoom calls and I'm on the phone all the time. In terms of the movies, which not only include the two I talked about a moment ago, but we're also involved in the slowest post-production in history, finishing a movie called The Primevals. So I get very slowly stop motion animation shots. We're finally pulling that one together. That's months and months away still. Blade, we finally finished. And the mixing of these movies, that's probably the main difference of what I would go to a mixing stage and we'd be there and we do our thing. Now I'm doing it, on the computer, painstakingly sending 8 billion notes. And, it's okay. It works. That's probably the main creative difference. We had a few shows that were scheduled to start. We had people already in Croatia to shoot the 5th subspecies film, which is a big deal for us. And that had to be canceled. I was going to shoot a movie in Italy. That had to be canceled. But as far as running my operation, it's kind of me and a computer and a phone and, all the stuff I do at my office at Raleigh Studios, I do here now. The creative side of it has been fun because I couldn't sit around and not invent something that was sort of timed with what we're all going through. So as bizarre these two movies are, Corona Zombies and Barbie and Kendra Save the Tiger King, they were super fun to do because they're very topical. You saw the first one, dropped in commercials and Trump spinning lies and God knows what else we put in there that keep it very current. And those shows were fun to do and quick. And the main thing I'm doing is, we have 5 different streaming sites, and the main one is Amazon. Then we have an app here called Full Moon Features. And then we have a site also in Germany, which is a Full Moon, also on Amazon, and an Amazon channel in the UK. So, populating and programming those sites with my movies, new movies we've licensed. It's been kind of a fun time because there's a lot of people people want action. They're at home, they're doing whatever they're doing. So, and I know all these sellers and buyers for so many years. So we acquired some really cool movies that have been buried and evolved since the 80s in Italy from some distributors I know. These are all movies licensed, some cases for Blu-ray DVD release, but in all cases for release on streaming. Sort of programming that streaming site is a trip because we release anywhere from 3 to 5 movies every week. And, but again, the process is the lab, the thing, the upload, most of the art is done fresh or repurposed. So that's a big thing I'm involved with. But almost all of that I do in front of a computer in an office. So unless I'm out directing something or at a mix, 80% of the time that I've spent is pretty much the same.
Well, I'm sure the next time I talk to you, there'll be another movie that you've made. I mean, that's without a doubt. Alex, what have you been working on? I know I feel like I see you all the time now because, like, with you and Rob, I watch both of you on YouTube, so I kind of feel like I know what you're up to. But what are you working on?
Well, I've again, like many of our co-panelists, I've been busier than ever before during this time. I've launched 2 additional websites to my family of websites: Indie Film Hustle Academy, which is an online education platform, and Bulletproof Screenwriting, which is dedicated to just screenwriters. And both of those have been launched within the last 5 weeks. So I took the time off. I just started cranking things out. I'm working on my next book. I'm in development on a feature right now. I'm actually writing a rewriting an old screenplay. I was like, let me bust that old one out. It might be a little timely to come again. We're sick. We're all sick filmmakers. We're sick individuals that are constantly going back and going into stuff. And I was literally driving with my family, riding my bike around the neighborhood. This is like 5-6 weeks ago. And as I turn a corner, I see an independent film crew on the street stealing a shot. And I'm just like, you guys, I mean, this is, come on. And this is like in the heat of like people are like, this is before the protests. This is all, we're still hot and heavy on the virus. And I'm just like, we're sick. We're just sick individuals. Like the first thing is most people like avoid danger. Like, no, I'm going to stay home. But no, a filmmaker is like, let's get a group of people together. Let's get them outside with no protection whatsoever. And let's make a coronavirus film right away. And it's just like, oh my God, we're all insane. We're insane. I always tell people that we're high-tech carnies, basically, is what we are. We're very high-tech carnival workers. That's exactly what we are. But I have a list of 1,000 other things I'm doing, but I'm busy, to say the least.
Well, I've seen your bulletproof screenwriting, watch some of those podcasts, and they're great. I mean, if you're an aspiring screenwriter, that is such a great way to just, binge all that stuff. And I mean, it's fantastic. You're the Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, which is a book that I know you would be able to plug it at the end, but that book is a fantastic way to really learn how to not just make films, but also make money making films. And it's something that I believe it's important for filmmakers, yes, to be creative, but to be a successful independent filmmaker, you have to have a business sense. You really do need that business sense. So you cover that so well.
Thank you so much.
I've got more questions for you guys, so I hope everybody can stick around for the rest of the panel.
We're not going anywhere, man. We got nowhere to go.
Well, what I'm curious about, Charlie, you talked about like these production methods where you're basically listening to your sound mix and getting notes. I want to know, like, what are some new production methods? And it's funny, Alex, that you brought up the independent film crew. I'm reminded of a story of Roger Corman after there was the San Francisco earthquake, sent a crew up there to get B-roll for a movie he didn't know he was making yet. But I think as indie filmmakers, you kind of got to use like the tools that you have. So I want to ask everybody, what are some of the things that you've heard or ways you've heard independent filmmakers are kind of adjusting to what's happening and using new sets of tools to continue to be creative? And I guess we'll just go around. If Charlie, you can stick around.
I'm not going. I'm here. I'm not leaving. You yell cut.
Okay, good. Well, Rob, what are you hearing? And I know we got a hard out at 45 minutes, so we got 15 minutes left. So I really want to get through these questions. But what sort of things have you heard, like new production methods that indie filmmakers are employing during this time? You mentioned Fiverr. That's a great tip.
Well, I'll tell you something that I did that people are going to think I'm nuts. But so this movie, Tango Shalom, that not only did was I a producer on it and I edited the film, but I was also the post supervisor, and we had no money. And you still have to finish things in a professional capacity. And at the time when I started this years ago, I started editing this feature film on Final Cut 10, Final Cut X, which might not have been the best idea. However, I can now, what Walter Murch did when he wrote a book about cutting Cold Mountain on Final Cut 7, I could write that book about cutting a feature film on Final Cut X. And I'll tell you what I was able to do. We didn't have any money, really, to get the movie color timed properly, color graded. Normally what you do is you go to your grading house, and if you're not doing it on your own, if I didn't cut it in DaVinci or whatever, but I wanted a professional colorist. So what I did was I exported the individual reels. We broke the film into reels because we still work in reels because of sound. We broke it into reels, and I took the reels, the 4K reels that I exported directly out from my computer, and I took them to the post house. So I didn't have to have them. I didn't need to take all of my media, all of my thousands of pieces of media or whatever. I just took my finished reels, which meant I had readjusted any shots that I wanted to reposition. I did all of the work that needed to be done. And I took these reels to my color house. It was actually Blue Line in right there, right next to Universal. And I'd work with them on my colorist, Randy Kuhnfield, who had done a short film for me. I had a great relationship with him. And I just brought him my reels. And it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars cheaper than it would have been. And I was like, really? I mean, really? We're not going back to the original source files? I mean, is this going to work? And he's like, nope, it's going to work. And we actually color timed. I worked with the director of photography, Massimo Zeri. I worked with the DP. He came in and we color timed the reels with Randy, and it's 6 reels long, and we saved ourselves a ton of money. And because when you're finishing a film, you don't want to skimp. And we made the film. It was a low budget film anyway, but it looks incredible. And I didn't know that you could do that. I was used to like, we've got to go and we have to take all the original files. And I was like, nope, didn't have to do that. And I was worried about it, but we have an HDR10 color grade. And if our distributor wants Dolby Vision as well, we're ready to go. We'll have to go back and re-output it, but we can do it as well. And it saved us a lot of money. And I learned I wouldn't tell anybody at a studio I did that, but we did, and it worked.
Well, that's awesome. Tara, what could you recommend? And the one thing I should mention about you is you're not just a filmmaker, you also work in film distribution, which has its own set of challenges. But what would you say are some new tools that you've discovered during this time?
Actually, there's an editor who I haven't signed yet, so I'm not going to mention his name, but he's in the UK, and he's going to work on my next film. And I was like, how are we going to do this? Because I can't fly and spend 2 weeks in quarantine and do all this, right? And we used Zoom and shared the screen, and we were able to really dig in. And it felt like I was sitting next to him, and I was shocked because I am a control freak when it comes to, like I want to be right there. I want to feel what's going on. And I didn't think you could do that. And it was great. So we did a little bit to see how, him and I did together. And it was really, I'm surprised. And that's just Zoom. That's not even digging in deep,
Wow.
It's good. I'm impressed, and it's great. And it actually opens up now. What this lockdown has done, I think, for a lot of things is that you realize things that you thought were limited really aren't, because you were forced to use them. Right. Mm-hmm. So now you want to work with somebody in Asia, as long as you can stay awake in the right times, you can make it work. So you can use talent that you didn't necessarily feel comfortable working with prior to. So that was very nice to find out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I will say that using, what we're using to just talk to each other right now is open it up on the Film Threat podcast. I've interviewed filmmakers from Australia, from Madrid, Spain, from all over. It's kind of forced us at Film Threat to change how we do things, which has actually broadened our ability to be able to talk to a variety of filmmakers from all over. Charlie, you mentioned how you did Corona Zombies. Can you tell us, are there some other tools that you've discovered and being forced to work in a different way?
No.
Okay.
Tools, schmools. I started in 35. It's all, yes, they're amazing tools, and that's not what I want to talk about for a minute. For sure, it's easier now to go and, do a mix and send notes. But, the main tool that is critical, most people don't talk about, is talent. Because, there are a lot of people who can do a faux movie, snip it together, and it kind of looks good until you begin watching it. But what I'm going to spend a moment on, which is critical to everything we're doing, is promotion. That's where we've been able in recent years, especially with the way we get out there and the crazy gimmicks we invent to market these films. We don't have a ton of money. So how do you spread the word? How do you get the voice out there without spending more than you're hoping to bring in? And we've done a lot of things, especially with Full Moon Features, which is pretty new app. It's a streaming site. You can get it on Roku and on Apple. And of course, you just go to fullmoonfeatures.com. But I wanted to tell you for just 2 brief minutes, I know we're running out of time, a promotion that we invented that we're sort of uniquely suited to do, but I think anyone can apply it to whatever they've done in the past. So, we had a lot of conventions we were going to attend this year. We had 200 play dates through Alamo Draft House. We're going to set up little merch booths. Everything started off great, and then COVID came, and that killed the whole shebang. The promotion that I came up with that I was going to use at these conventions was you sign up for 1 year at fullmoonfeatures.com. It's a monthly $6.99, but for a year it's $59.95, which is, money. It's not $10. But you sign up for 1 year and we will give you a 12 Blu-ray box set of the entire Puppet Master series, which is $120 value. And that was the gimmick. That's what we were going to do. And that was going to be kind of the thing we were going to do with conventions. So I decided, okay, the conventions are gone. That's not going to work. The Alamo Draft House thing is postponed. So I created this promotion online, and I knew it would do well because, again, you get a year of Full Moon Features, which is a lot of cool stuff, and you get this physical. It's kind of trading the physical world for the digital world, and we've shipped over 2,000 of these, which is not only amazing in terms of dollars and cents. I mean, they're not cheap to make. It's 12 Blu-rays. It's not like, a very inexpensive item, but we've got 2,000 more subscribers on Full Moon Features because of that. And I think, that's where a lot of people got to be thinking about taking advantage of this incredible era where you can promote things and get the word out there very inexpensively. That's sort of, I think, important, cool. Equally important as you talked about the financial side of this, because I'm in this to make a living. That's how I've done it for 8,000 years. So, you got to keep thinking of different ways to get the word out.
Wow, that's awesome. Alex, what can you add to that? Any new production methods that you've discovered?
Yeah. There's two things you could use. I mean, I know you guys were talking about Fiverr, which is an excellent platform, but also Upwork.com is also another wonderful platform to hire freelancers from around the world at an affordable rate to do anything you basically need at all. They can do. One wonderful remote collaborative tool that I've used before is Frame.io. Yeah. Is fantastic. It is just a wonderful, wonderful tool. I did a whole show on it that I was directing, and I had my VFX team on the East Coast, and I'm here, and we're going back and forth and dropping notes, and it was just such a wonderful experience using that. So that's a really great tool as well. The one thing I'm kind of excited about, I actually just released an article about it today on the website, which is about the new virtual production technology that The Mandalorian used. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's not for indie films. I'm like, well, it kind of can be. And I actually have a video of a guy at home in his garage with not a lot of money set up a virtual production studio where he was shooting someone on green screen and incorporating it into the volume, if you will, all internally. And it's still very much in its infancy for the independent filmmakers. But unlike when the T-Rex walked across our screens in '93, that technology took a while before it was affordable for independent filmmakers to use. And arguably you can get a T-Rex across. I mean, obviously there's many companies who do a lot of that stuff. It's very affordable. I think that the time period between now, when Mandalorian used it, has been used on Jungle Book and on the other one he did, Jungle Book and Lion King. But now I think that time period is going to be much quicker because it's off-the-shelf technology, these video game engines. I think it's a lot of potential there, and I do think it's going to change the way production is done in many, many ways. I think it is as big of a deal as a T-Rex walking across the screen in '93. It's that big of a deal. And if you guys have not watched The Gallery on Disney Plus, which is the making of The Mandalorian, you're missing out. You should absolutely watch that and just watch what they do. And I have a friend of mine who is going to be on the show who actually worked on The Mandalorian, and he has a lot of inside information on the technology, how they did it, how he's a comper. So it's not all what they make it seem like. Oh yeah, you just show some LED stuff and shoot it, and it's all in the camera. Yes, some of it is, but there is still a lot of comping. But it's still substantially cheaper than if you were going to try to do it the old-fashioned way with just green screens. So that's really exciting, and I think because of what we're going through with COVID, I think that is going to be something that we're all going to be forced to learn and use, and I think it's going to be adopted much quicker than it would without this kind of pressure from COVID.
And if you'd like to see a T-Rex walk across the screen in an independent film, I have a recommendation for you: The Velocipaster.
Yeah, you read my mind. You read my
Which is a real
mind.
movie. It's about a guy who's a pastor who it's kind of like a werewolf movie, but he turns into the Velociraptor. Yes, exactly. So
take my money now. Just take my money.
But it's interesting how those tools, they get used by the big studios, and then we come up with a way to do it on an indie level. I think when it comes to marketing, in a way, independents are way ahead when it comes to stuff like that. And then that gets co-opted by the studios. And speaking of that, I want to talk about like movie theaters. Not all movie theaters are fully open yet. We have drive-ins now are having a resurgence. I will say I have been to the drive-in. If you are not a regular person who goes to the drive-in, do yourself a favor, have a drive-in movie experience. It's contactless movie viewing. You can be on your phone and not bother anybody else. You can bring your own snacks and beverages. I am a huge drive-in movie fan, and I'm glad that they've made a comeback. Now they're really crowded. It's really incredible. But is that now that like movie theaters are not fully open, they're not at full capacity, it's sort of different. How is this changed movie going? And I mean, I will say for myself, just it's a habit for me to go to the movies. So I will say I've bought more films on VOD than I have previously, just because, they make it easy on Vudu or iTunes or whatever. It's just really easy to just, buy an indie film. Can you speak to and we really have limited time, so we'll go around, Rob, Tara, and Charlie and Alex, real quick on indie films being released and how that's changed things for good or bad.
Well, I think for me, the idea, obviously, to get in a movie theater is the dream. It's always been the dream. But the reality of the marketplace is that's a very different kind of thing now. I think movie theaters, unfortunately, are for the spectacles. They're for the large studio tentpole properties. As much as I even like to go to my Landmark Theater here in Pasadena and see indie films, that's just, I don't think, a reality. And I think, on the other hand, indie filmmakers have a better opportunity now. You can control your own distribution, whether it's SVOD or ways of distributing directly to the consumer by using the marketplace. I had a friend who made a documentary called Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Line of the Poaching Wars, and they had a huge Vimeo worldwide event, and she was able to promote her film. It was a huge thing for them. They just decided to do it as a grassroots thing that happened over COVID during shut lockdown, and she got more people to see her movie than it could have been in a million different festivals. And I think we have a huge opportunity now to get our work in front of audiences that couldn't have seen it before.
Yeah. Tara, how do you respond to that? Virtual cinemas are kind of blowing up, right? Like where you can purchase a ticket and actually supports a local theater.
Well, it's very exciting to hear that Vimeo did that and it was successful for her. We were looking at doing something like that for Tony Hawk's documentary, which is not off the table. And because he's so social media active and supports it, that will lend itself to it. With regard to the theaters straddling being a sales agent, distributor, filmmaker, the risk, I think, is so high already with having a successful independent film. To risk now going into a theater is almost silly. Because it's so expensive to then market on top of that and get it in there. And it's unfortunate because it was actually doing really well prior to COVID happening. Like Fathom was a great outlet. So I think I have to revisit putting Tony Hawk on an online premiere event. Right. And if you can funnel the audience that way and really market and get people there, it's amazing. I could see it actually doing a lot better than it would in a physical theater.
And Charlie, I don't think I'm out of line by pointing out that for the cost of going to 3 movies, you could just get your app for a year, and that's thousands of movies.
Yeah, something like that. No, sadly, theatrical venue for independent filmmakers gone years ago. We distributed movies theatrically in the 80s, the early 90s. Most of those films had theatrical. Unless there's a specific reason to do it, just for fun and just for prestige, complete waste of time. That's how energy go into what I talked about earlier, which is, how to take advantage, as you said, of this incredible media where, with the right model, tons of people can see or at least be aware of your film. You can't do that in a theatrical release. So it's nice, and I also think people have grown out of the habit. These 3 months at home have not been helpful for a lot of industries, including going to the movies.
Yeah. Alex, you'll have the last word on this question.
Yeah, I think that the world that we live in now, that my whole book is based on becoming a film entrepreneur, creating multiple revenue streams from your films, not just using the exhibition to hold on to just whatever the distributor gives me is all the money I'm ever going to make on this film. When there's countless filmmakers who live outside that box, who make an obscene amount of money and can generate an actual living with their films and with their art, and I think that is the new future. As far as theatrical is concerned, I agree with everybody on the panel. It's absolutely silly to try to release something theatrically now, other than just be like, hey, I read that one article, like hey, he became the #1 film in America. I'm like, no one cares. No one cares. You were cool. You were slick. No one cares. But I think that there is a lot of hope for self-distribution. If, again, like Tara says, you can funnel that audience. If you can drive traffic, which is the most important thing, you can generate a living with your film.
Great.
And that being said, again, Chris, that would be a great podcast for everybody to come back and talk about specifically.
And then some,
Yeah.
like 5
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, we can definitely
we can all feed off each other too.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, we can definitely continue this conversation on our respective, the Film Threat podcast, Rob on Robservations, Alex on Indie Film Hustle. I got to wrap it up, unfortunately, but I really want to thank Robert Meyer Burnett, Tara Wood, Charlie Band, and Alex Ferrari. This was Independent Filmmaker Survival Guide. I also want to thank the organizers at San Diego Comic-Con. I have been going to San Diego Comic-Con since the 90s.
Me too.
And the volunteers there, the people there, the fans, the people that I connect with, they're people that live in Los Angeles near where I live that I only ever see at San Diego Comic-Con. And I just want to thank everyone involved in San Diego Comic-Con for putting on the Comic-Con at home. I really love you all and miss you all. And I can't wait for us to all get back together at San Diego Comic-Con. Fingers crossed next year at the convention center. Love that con. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you on the next
Thank you.
on the next podcast. Thanks again.
It was an honor.
Thanks, guys.